Welcome to the Aha Moments podcast, brought to you by Pinellas County Schools. I am Robin Ford, a senior coordinator for professional development, and I'm thrilled to be here with my co-host.
My name is Jolene Jackson, and I am the Director of Professional Development.
Today, we are exploring the crucial topic of conditions for learning and how effective educators create environments where students thrive.
That's right, Robin. We have two exceptional educators with us today that we are so happy to have you join us. Our first guest here is Lauren Ruescas, yes. Okay, I practiced and we did all right. Lauren Ruescas, who is a middle school ELA teacher, and she has been teaching for 9 years. And then we also have Cody Gilbert, who is here with us. She is a VPK ESE teacher at Mount Vernon Elementary. And can you tell us how many years of experience you have?
This is my 12th year.
Your 12th year? Okay, so we got 9 and 12. And then tell us what school you teach at.
Osceola Middle School.
Osceola Middle School, great. And so we have a vast experience here. We have middle school and we have pre-K. So thank you for being here. And we are excited.
Yes, welcome. Before we get too far along, let's get an understanding of what conditions for learning actually are. According to Robert Marzano, conditions for learning refer to the environmental, instructional, and emotional factors, including classroom setup, clear learning goals, effective feedback, and positive relationships that collectively create an optimal setting for student achievement.
Woo! Now that is a mouthful. Okay, so let's unpack that. And that's really what we've invited you here today, is not to necessarily talk about the definition of conditions for learning, but how to appropriately set those up for our students to have success. And I loved how before we even got started today, I was using a bunch of educational lingo and you said, I'm more of like a hippie teacher that doesn't know the words. Is that okay? Yes, it is okay. So we're going to dive in and we're going to share real life experiences. That's what it's really all about, and have some of those aha moments.
Absolutely. All right, let's start with you, Lauren. You transitioned from over a decade in property management to teaching middle school ELA. Can you share a specific example of how your property management experience directly influenced your classroom?
I was exposed to so many different families when I was in property management. Worked in various buildings and properties throughout Florida and in Texas. And I was exposed to just a huge amount of people that came from different backgrounds, different socioeconomic backgrounds, and different countries, immigrants. So I was exposed to so many different people that carried into being a teacher, because I'm exposed to so many different children facing so many different situations at home, whether it's they're new to the country or if their family is struggling a bit more than maybe a neighbor is. And that has really helped me connect with not only my students, but with their families as well.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, well, that is absolutely wonderful. And it's just interesting as you were speaking to see you talking to those families and how that really does, I imagine, empathy, relatedness, and that you can really build those relationships with
absolutely
your families. Wonderful. Cody, so you shared with us a little bit about how you have made some adjustments over the years into setting up your conditions for learning, and you shared with us specifically the classroom environment. And so kind of what are some steps that you've taken to set up your room so that your learners really thrive?
Well, so I don't think you can create a room from the get-go, because you don't know who your students are and who's around you. And building an environment that is fluid enough to encompass everybody who comes into your space is very important. So throughout the years, I've changed things based on who is in front of me, because if I have kids that need bigger spaces to play, or for a while I bought yoga mats because they were really struggling to sit at a table, and having them on the floor and having a defined space was very important to them. Mm-hmm. And something that I've done some research on is kind of that, what do they call it? Flexible seating.
Mm-hmm.
I know they call that. We call it a space for you.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah. So just changing up based on who's in front of me and what their specific needs are.
Yeah. Okay. So you shared a little bit that there was a way that you did it early on in your career, right?
Yes.
And then you shifted.
Yes.
Okay. So some might call that you had like a aha moment, right?
Exactly.
Okay. So could you tell us a little bit about like what you used to do, and then what was that aha moment, and then some new actions you took?
I used to be pretty structured in what I felt like kids should do and what the environment that it should be. And I think having my own children and kind of realizing what they needed in their lives really helped me to think more broadly about what the students in front of me were going to need, and looking at their kind of perspectives and what they needed from the educational environment.
Okay.
And then it wasn't always a me mindset. It needed to be a them mindset.
Oh, so that was your aha moment. It was shifting from being a teacher me mindset, but really being a mom showed you what kids need, and then you then transferred that into your own classroom. Okay, wonderful.
That's fantastic, Cody. That's really great. Lauren, you mentioned thriving in a warm but highly structured environment as a student. So how do you balance that warmth and structure in your own classroom to make sure your students feel safe and they feel supported?
I make sure that I greet them every day when they walk in. That is absolutely huge, because it's a good way for me to recognize if there's other issues going on before we even get started with our day. Mm-hmm. So when they come in, we have just a set bell ringer every single day. They get their independent reading books. They come sit down and they get a moment just to compose themselves from having the chaos of the hallway, trying to get their locker open, trying to get to class, and they get to just stop and quietly read. So already we've lowered any stress levels and we've created structure but comfort at the same time. And then I just go from there with the lesson for that day. I feel that if students know what is expected of them on a daily basis and that stays the same, it gives them comfort because they always know the stability that they are going to see in the classroom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how does that, when they are coming in reading, how does that then transition to what happens next? Like, how do they carry that experience of reading to the active lesson of the day?
Again, I feel like it calms them. Mm-hmm. I feel like there is just a ton, again, of chaos. So that gets them ready to the mindset of we're going to be reading, we're going to be understanding, we're going to be focused on language arts. So they're already started from the moment they walked in the door with reading and comprehension and vocabulary. So then we segue right into whatever our classroom novel is, whether that's on the desk already, or if it's going right into a very teacher-centered lesson for that day.
Great. Wonderful. So we've talked a little bit about the room arrangement, and we might talk a little bit more about that, but we've talked a little bit about the room arrangement. We've also talked about some of those do now activities and how to help students transition from their previous activity, either in the hall or coming from the car rider line or whatever it is, into the learning environment. And we realize that's really important. Let's go ahead and shift now into they're in the room, the environment is set for them, they feel settled, and they're ready to learn. And now we're going to emerge into the lesson of the day, and we're going to start talking about what they're going to learn. And so part of the conditions for learning is that our students really have clarity about their learning goals. And so I'm going to start with you, Cody. How do you create that clarity for the learning goals for your students, which you have pre-K ESC students, and so I imagine that looks very differently, but in some ways very similar. So tell us a little bit how you do that.
We use a lot of like visuals and hand motions. Know some basic like kind of sign language that helps. Especially like when we're talking about the alphabet, I could sign the whole alphabet, so it gives them like a visual focus. Just trying to give them something that's simple but very clear about what you need to do. 2 years ago, I did Springboard because I actually started out as an ESC associate and came into teaching later. So while I've been in the school for 12 years, I've only actually been the ESC teacher. This is now my 4th year. And they talked about breaking down your directions into very clear steps. And I think that's really been helpful. Like, when I show you 1, we're going to stand up. When I show you 2, we're going to turn and face this way. When I show you 3, you're going to get to this spot. And so just being very direct and clear about what I need from them and actually giving them a visual of where they're going. Yep. Especially with ESE students, because we have a lot of students who are language delayed or speech delayed who may not, they have a lot of receptive language, but getting that expressive language out. They know what I'm asking them, but them actually producing what is being asked of them, they need that clear, kind of very explicit instruction and visualization.
Yeah. And I think for our listeners out there, because not everyone teaches 4-year-olds and ESE teacher or students, but for our math teachers, our high school math teachers, ELA teachers all over elementary, what you said is visuals, and we are primarily visual learners. And so providing that visual anchor, and I imagine you do that in your own classroom. So I just want to make that connection for our listeners. And then also you shared like being very explicit about what is going to be happening today and following those multi-step directions. And all of our students need that, not just our VPK ESE students.
I was going to say the same thing about the tie to the clarity of expectations and how that is so foundational to building really strong conditions for learning and helping students feel safe and knowing what's happening. So thank you.
Yeah, and I know we didn't have this question scripted, but I would like to go ahead and kick it over to Lauren too, because I want to, so that our listeners can see multiple ways to unpack those learning goals.
Okay. Same question.
Yeah. So tell us about how you make clarity for the learning goals for your students.
I wish I could say I was super original with this, but I have the board set up. We do always go over what we're going to be, what our focus is for that day. Then we go through what our agenda is going to be. Everything is listed for whatever classes I'm teaching, because I do teach 7th and 8th grade.
Okay.
And then we go step by step, and they have a routine that they know where to get their things, get situated, and ready to begin. So.
Yeah, and I think let's not diminish having a simple routine, because sometimes simple routines really do help establish that safety and that practice where they can rely upon so that the learning is a little more flexible inside those routines.
I do wish I could do sign language, though. I thought that was fascinating that, you can sign every letter in the alphabet. I think that's amazing. I'm sure that works so well for your students.
It really, it's very helpful. And like basic commands like stand and sit or walk are things that you can show them quietly in the hallway so that you're not speaking when you're supposed to be quiet, because we transition from place to place. And it's very nice to them to have those visuals, but me not always having to carry something around.
It's awesome.
Thanks. Okay, so Lauren,
yeah.
we got an aha moment from Cody. I was wondering if you could share an aha moment that you've had regarding conditions for learning.
Something really big happened 2 DWTs ago, and I was sitting there, and we'd had, a number of hours sitting there learning. And I remember thinking, I am a grown woman. This is my career. And if I don't stand up soon and move around and have a break, and I remember thinking vividly, this is how my students feel. They're in school all day long, and it's not even their favorite subject all the time. And so that was an aha moment for me to bring a little more joy, a little more of a tiny break in our routine. It doesn't have to be every day. But for example, today I could see 5th period, the kids were zoning out in the classroom, and we just stopped for a second, and we stood up, and we stretched, and we talked and giggled for like a minute. That was it. We sat back down. It was such a change. And the way they were sitting and how they were paying attention to the lesson. And it's just something that was a big aha moment. And it's continued for 2 years for me to just keep in mind they're 12. They want to move around a little bit.
Yeah.
They need breaks.
Yes. Wow. So you added joy where you just had to move and laugh for a minute. What are some other ways that you bring that movement and that kind of aliveness into the active learning environment?
We do a lot of collaborative work. My room is set up with round tables, so it's really easy for me to be like, okay, turn to your partners, turn to your table mates, and let's get together. So I usually have them come up to the front of the room, and they take turns, sharing what their knowledge and what they have found out. And they're silly, and they're goofy about it, and they're nervous. And then they get lollipops. I know, we want them to want to learn, but the lollipops help them quite a bit. And it's just, again, the movement. They get to get up. They get to be a little bit silly, a little bit goofy. It doesn't mean they're not getting the target and they're not learning. It just means they're having a little bit more fun with our goals.
Absolutely.
And again, joy.
Yeah. Cody, do you incorporate movement into your classes?
Oh, yes.
I imagine you did that too.
Well, and also, like, when I think about them sitting on the carpet in front of me for story time, in the past, I would say you have to sit on your bottom, crisscross applesauce, but that's not realistic for some students, especially some of our ESC students who maybe they can't sit crisscross. They have like physical therapy needs or stuff like that. So letting them, like some kids sit kind of in the back of the room where maybe they're standing up. I remember very specifically last year, a little girl, and we were really struggling with like just listening. She loved the story, but she just shouted out constantly. And I asked her, well, would you like to stand in the back of the room? And she would be just bouncing around. But she was so much better about raising her hand then and waiting for her turn to speak because she was getting that movement out and she was still paying attention to what I was saying. And that was like a big moment for me. Like all she needed was to move while she was processing information. And I think that's true for a lot of students.
Wow. I'm just really present to your level of patience and flexibility that you allow for what's best for your learners in your classroom and what they really need. That's great. Okay, so one of the things that you shared with us, Cody, is maintaining an optimistic mindset by finding one positive each day at school. So what is a specific strategy or routine that you use with your students that helps incorporate that positive mindset in your classroom?
Always having a smile on your face. You're ready. Also, just thinking not in a deficit kind of model. Thinking about these are children. Everybody's sending you their very best.
Yes.
Seeing the good in every single child, noticing that and bringing that out to them. And also a mindset for me is that I love to go to work. And I think sometimes the conditions for learning start there is like me wanting to be there and me enjoying the space that I'm in is important. When they see that, they enjoy it more because I love listening and seeing them when they understand something. That's like the best thing in the world.
Can you dive a little deeper into that? Like share a specific example of when your mindset, your approach, your conditions for learning help turn a bad situation around with a student?
Yes, because sometimes they'll come in and they're crying. They're very upset they're 4 years old. They just left mommy sometime for the first time. And when they see that somebody's there and wants them there, I think that a lot of the time switches things around, giving them a moment for a hug and just them knowing that I'm happy that they're there. I'm happy to be here. That is, that's almost always can turn a situation around.
Yeah. Thank you, Cody. All right, Lauren, you've replaced rows of desks with large circular tables.
Yes.
And this is to facilitate collaboration. What strategies, what techniques do you do that ensures that you hear from all of your students, that all voices are heard?
Well, obviously, as they're doing, whatever the set task is, I'm monitoring the room, making sure that everyone's participating at the table. But as I said before, when they're done and their time's up, they're coming to the front of the room and they're all taking turns sharing the information they have accumulated together as a team. And that's how I can check that they're all engaged in what we were doing, as well as the constant monitoring. So they do a good job. They like the collaborative work a lot.
It sounds like you have a good setup for it.
It's perfect. It was something, right when I started teaching, I walked into a room and unfortunately it wasn't the best school in the world. And the room kind of reminded me of like institutionalized. It was just metal row after metal row of chairs and no color. And I remember thinking, absolutely not. That is not the environment I want. And it started with the round tables and then just built from there.
So have you faced any challenges with this setup?
If the classes are really large, because I try and keep one seat open so I can see everyone's faces, even if I'm at the front of the room. If it's a really large class, sometimes I do have to have them turn around or get them to shift a little bit. But other than that, it works wonderfully.
Excellent. All right. So, Cody, this is a pretty hard question. We're going to move to the future. And we've kind of already talked a little bit about this before we got started. But as educational practices evolve, how do you see the concept of conditions for learning changing? And what should educators do to stay ahead of that and keep that in mind?
So I think we're already seeing a shift. I'm already seeing a shift from when I started. Lots of our kids are now on a tablet more often, where before they might have sat in front of a TV and watched shows, but they're more sedentary. And so sometimes bringing out the play, which is what preschool is about, if we're being honest, that you're learning through play.
Yeah.
There's not a ton of sitting.
Standards-based play.
Yes.
We are learning.
Yes. There's lots of learning that goes on just in those little things, but I notice a big difference because they are spending more time sitting on a tablet, maybe playing a game on a tablet or talking to somebody through a tablet, but having that face-to-face and like those interactions, I already see a difference. So I think we need to be mindful that this is the way things are turning, but also having a mindset that they learn best through peer-to-peer interactions or just face-to-face interactions. And so while we should incorporate some technology and things, we also need to like kind of go back to the basics where they're just having that time together and really spending the time in the center, like when they're at center, spending that time in the centers with them, talking to them and getting them kind of accustomed to really being with people.
Yes. Yeah, that's huge. And so you're seeing this need that while play was already very intentional in the learning environment and peer-to-peer interaction, you try to bring out even more of that because you know that they're getting a lot of that technology and screen time at home and less of that in the school.
Yes.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Lauren, I felt like you wanted to comment.
Oh, I just like the peer-to-peer. They learn best, which is what I was talking about earlier. I like when they're working together and they can bounce their ideas off of each other without feeling the stress of, am I getting the answer right or wrong? So that's why I was shaking my head. I just love that.
It's about a journey too. It's not the like end product, that journey of talking to each other. Sometimes is so much more important than did they get the correct answer in the end.
Well, creating the environment where they feel safe to share that, I think, is really powerful. Yes. Okay. So, Lauren, reflecting on your 9 years of teaching, you have made changes.
Yeah.
So I want you to give some advice to first-year teachers. So where would they start now? What strategies? What would you recommend? Reflecting on your 9 years, on your journey, where would you recommend? We have a bunch of new first-year teachers in the county.
So I would say be flexible in what you envision your classroom should look like and make adjustments as needed. And that's going to be based on your personality and the school environment that you're in.
Cody, has Lauren shared anything with you that's an aha moment? Or is there something that you can take away that you've learned from things she's said from a middle school ELA perspective?
I really love the circular tables and like having that space. And I know that we don't spend a ton of time at a table in pre-K, but just having one table, maybe that was circular in a space like a round table kind of thing. We do, I taught kindergarten last year and I came back down to VPK and they do a lot of, they call them conversation circles and kind of maybe using a table to bring that back. Like this is our conversation table.
Yeah.
I think would be just such a wonderful thing.
Well, good. I'm glad I can help a little bit.
Fantastic. And Lauren, have you heard anything Cody has said or shared?
I like the hand signals. I could definitely get behind that, even though it's middle school students. I love the idea of if we're in the hallway or if we're doing anything, maybe during fire drills or whatever else is going on. I love the idea of just having a signal that won't disrupt any other classes or the hallways, whatever it is. So I love that. I might look into that. I won't learn the whole alphabet, but I will get hand signals.
Yeah, well, Robin is offering a new course through the professional development department called Academic Discourse.
Absolutely.
And it has hand signals that you can use with middle schoolers for redirection and talk structures. And yeah, it's really
I love it.
Yeah, it's great for active listening. So it embeds like if you get students talking and sharing, how do you ensure that the rest of the class is listening?
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like a throwback to our Zoom days where you're like, yeah, I agree, or you can actually make it visible, which can be really helpful.
I'm very interested in that.
Mm-hmm. 5 Essentials Academic Discourse. Find it on PLA.
There you go. All right. Well, now we are about to come to a close here.
Yes.
And thank you so much, Lauren and Cody, for being with us today. It was an absolute joy to have you. Thank you for sharing your insights, your triumphs, your struggles, your victories, all of that. We like to end with what we call a lightning round. And Lauren, you are actually going to go first.
Okay.
And so it's like a this or that with an educational twist. All right. You ready?
I think so.
Okay. Books or e-readers?
Oh, goodness. Books.
Group work or independent projects?
Group work.
Morning classes or afternoon classes?
Morning. Absolutely.
Structured routines or flexible schedules?
I would go with structure.
Classroom pets or no pets?
Oh, gosh. I would love to have pets. Right now, we just have Planty, the plant. And, we do water Planty, but I would love to actually have it. That'd be amazing.
That's fantastic, Lauren. All right, Cody, you're up. Are you ready?
Yep.
Okay. Interactive whiteboards or chalkboards?
Interactive whiteboards.
Hands-on activity or digital learning? I feel like we already know that one.
Hands-on.
Field trips or virtual tours?
Field trip.
Excellent. Frequent assessments or occasional assessments?
Frequent. You need that.
Okay. Okay. Classroom design. Flexible seating or traditional desks? We learned so much about that.
I know. I feel like I could have answered for them already.
I don't.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing your valuable insights today.
Absolutely. Thank you to our listeners for tuning in to the Aha Moments podcast.
And thank you both for your robust discussion on conditions for learning. And for our listeners, be sure to tune in next time for more
Aha Moments.
All right. Thank you guys. We're happy to have you.